Hey everybody, what is up? Welcome back to Funnel Trade. This is going to be a podcast style again, so nothing to see, just sit back and listen. I have two topics today that have kind of come up recently that I think are closely enough related that I can service them both in one video. So I had a patron ask me, what can I do for current income in this TCG investing hobby? And he kind of facetiously said, my wife doesn't like seeing me spend all this money on sealed boxes going back in the closet with no idea when some money will come in from this activity. And, well, current income is kind of a difficult thing in this hobby because to the extent that you can do things to generate income right now, card stores can almost always do them better. And they will have a lot of advantages over you. They have distributor access, they have probably better capitalization, they have better relationships in the business, around the industry, and they're going to be able to outperform you on all the short-term things. But the thing to keep in mind is that fundamentally the business model of a card store is turn inventory. Turn inventory and turn inventory and turn inventory. Because when you can buy at, say, $90 a box for Pokemon at the times when retail stores can actually get Pokemon boxes for $90 each from distribution. Well, if they sell them to walk-ins pack by pack, they're going to be selling them at pretty much MSRP, and that will be somewhere around $140 per box. Now, that's a little slow. It's labor intensive to sell to the walk-ins. You have to have a close by community of people who will walk in and buy that. Yes, there are a lot of expenses both in time and effort and money to running a physical store. But when you have that, you can sell for those higher margins. And so card stores, to a great extent, their business model revolves around just turning that product and making 20, 30, 40% money back on all that money they spend with the distributor, and then rolling that back in, buying more from the distributor, selling it locally or online, and making money again. Their business model is not chiefly concerned with holding product until it appreciates. And the nice thing about being in the TCG investing hobby is that you do not have all those overhead expenses of a card store. You don't have commercial rents, which are sky high. You don't have all the associated fees and expenses and insurance and taxes and everything else that's associated with running a physical store. And so you get out of that, but the downside is you don't get to make money as fast. So in general, current income in this hobby is kind of difficult. And one of the nice upsides of TCG investing is that it's different from stock investing in that there is a much different nature to the limitation of the supply of the assets we deal with. Now, obviously, a company, for the most part, kind of has a fixed amount of stock of its company that's available. Of course, they can conjure more out of thin air, but there's good reason to do that, and it's typically okay when they do it. But when you have boxes of, say, Throne of Eldraine booster packs, well, no more of those are ever going to be created. So over time, it's, to a large degree, the attrition of boxes that drives the value up. Now, there may be time periods when, say, Logan Paul popularizes opening old Pokemon boxes and everybody remembers, oh yeah, I used to play Pokemon back in the 90s. I'll go spend some of my vast disposable income on Pokemon boxes now, and I'll drive up the market price because I don't really care about the market. I'm just looking for the entertainment. But that's probably not going to happen with Throne of Eldraine booster boxes. And instead, again, most of the appreciation will come from attrition in the supply. But what that means is that long term, on, say, 3-year timelines and above, the price is almost always positive. There will very rarely be a 3-year timeline for sealed Magic booster boxes on which the price is negative. But with stocks, you can very easily have that. I mean, the entire oil and gas industry in the US from, like 2014 until 2021 was just in a bear market. And so the price of oil fell from 2014 onwards, and companies downsized and stock prices went down. And this went on and on and on for nearly 7 years. And so you can have these long super cycles in stocks that are just not reflected in TCG investing because the number of boxes is always going down. So you will always have more competition for the ever decreasing supply of boxes. And that's one of the great things. That's one of the things that we're here for, is because to some extent, it makes it a lot easier to be successful here if you're patient. And where that success comes from is that you will hold on to these boxes in your closet and you will wait out the other players. And I've made videos in the past about how there's this insane fascination with doubling your money in the TCG investing world. And so people will sit around and they'll say, well, I paid $90 for this box. As soon as I can sell it for $180, regardless of fees and shipping, then they'll get out. Or maybe they're a little more savvy and they will calculate the fees and shipping and they will say, when I can sell it and pay fees and shipping and be left with $180, then I will get out. And so simply outlasting that huge chunk of people who has this weird mental fascination with doubling their money, it means that once all of those boxes dry up coming out of those people's closets, then the rest of the demand has to be met by fewer and fewer sellers who are willing to part with their boxes. And so what you always expect to see kind of theoretically in TCG investing is that after you break through that doubling price, then you will see a period of faster appreciation. And so what you don't really want to be doing is selling these sealed boxes and these other things that you're putting away for long term. You don't want to be selling them early just so you can kind of grab some income on the short term. You want to be willing to wait 2, 3, 5 or more years before selling something, because there are almost break points in the life cycle of products after they've gone out of print and as their price starts rising, where they will take sudden moves upwards because the demand is drying up, because there's only a finite amount in the world. And because if you can outlast people to the correct point, you can grab those big gains. And so in effect, patience increases return. And so current income is kind of not the right thing to focus on with this business. If you do really want current income, you have to do things like start a YouTube channel, get AdSense revenue, get an audience of people who will listen to your recommendations, give them affiliate links, start a Patreon program, start a card store. There's ways to do it, but it takes a lot of work to lay that foundation and to get to the point where you have some recurring income coming in. Otherwise, you could do things like buy a bunch of Pokemon boxes when a set comes out, hold on to them for, say, 18 months, and then when the set is out of print, open the boxes, chop them into 10 booster pack bundles, because that will ship in a bubble mailer in the US very cheaply, under £1, and sell them 10 at a time on eBay and make your whole business that. And, you'll turn good profit. You won't be sitting on product for more than 18 or 24 months for any given box. But really, if you would just hold those boxes for, say, another 18 months, you would make way better gain, even on a time-adjusted basis like compound annual growth rate. And so, if you're looking for current income, it's difficult and it will spoil the future income. Remember, the best future income is from sitting on the boxes until you shake out most of the weak hands who are simply here to double their money. You get past them, and then the market is much more favorable to you. So yes, you can sell sooner, but at lower returns. Now, what's something else you can do for current income? I'll just throw this in here quickly, though I never recommend it. You can gamble on specs. And of course, you go to our MTG Finance subreddit, and you see all the people throwing away money on mountains of garbage modern cards, hoping to strike it rich. And as they themselves say over there, most specs go to zero. And that's actually a bit generous. I think the average return of a spec is negative, because in order to actually sell the cards and get out of them, they would typically have to pay more money in fees and shipping than the cards are now worth. So don't do that. Even though it may look like a way to get current income out of a TCG investing hobby, it is no better than gambling or lottery tickets or a dice game or any other terrible high risk, high reward type of activity that has an average return of 0 or less. And so getting into the next way you could potentially make current income, this is actually the second topic, where at the beginning I said we had 2 topics for today, and that is selling singles as the small guy. And we'll say you're the small guy, you operate out of your house, you do not own a card store, you do not have distributor access, and you are simply going to sell singles out of your house. And we will not assume that you are a dealer, what we kind of say in the old sports card term of dealer, where you buy big collections, you chop them up into the worthwhile cards, and you either grade and sell some of them, and then you take all the bulk and you sell it to somebody who specializes in bulk. Not like that. We're going to say these are the box breakers, essentially people buying new boxes and breaking the singles out and selling the singles for a profit over the cost of the boxes. And now, there was a time period when this really worked, and famously, Rudy used to make a lot of videos about it back in, say, 2016 to 2019 or so. I think 2019 is about when he stopped, and he actually started doing mass box openings and selling singles from them sometime around 2012 or 2013 to hear the stories he tells. And it was a different market at that time. And so things have substantially changed, and I'll get into why. Essentially, the market changed in the sense that TCG Player changed it. And so in those, we'll kind of comically call them the older days, old 2012 and say up to 2019, most of this business was being done on eBay. And so if you had distributor access like Rudy did back then you could buy a couple hundred boxes. You would get them several days before the set release. That would give you time to break them all open, sort the mythics, sort the rares, begin sorting the uncommons, making listings, and then on the official release day, you could start dropping the envelopes in the mail, sending them to people, and making money. And the way that TCG Player changed this is it made a more efficient marketplace. eBay is an inefficient marketplace in general because, to a great degree, eBay does a very poor job of figuring out what you are selling. It kind of tries to help you and it tries to figure it out, but fundamentally, eBay just kind of says, well, every listing is a different thing and we don't really know what it is. And that complicates showing the buyer what are some comparatively better prices for this thing you want. What are some substitutes you might buy instead, meaning just other copies of the same card in this case, where TCG Player does a much better job of that. You search for the card and then you start finding listings for it that are all grouped together. And so it's a fundamentally different way of treating the product and how you search for it. And that alone makes the market more efficient on TCG Player. But the second thing they did is really the direct service. And the way the direct service changes the market is they aggregate hundreds of thousands or probably really millions of cards at their warehouse in Syracuse, New York. And then buyers are able to come onto the website and pay one shipping fee to buy from amongst all those cards. And then all of the card stores that are in the direct program, they simply get an invoice from TCG Player saying, hey, here are the cards you owe us, mail them to Syracuse. And so those card stores get to mail one package, typically every week or 2 weeks or month, depending on what kind of volume you're doing. And they mail that one package to Syracuse, and that saves them on the shipping. And so essentially the marketplace, not only has it made it more efficient to find the products you're looking for, but it has greatly streamlined the shipping costs by aggregating cards, sending them to the buyer, and then aggregating the refilling of those cards, getting them from the local card stores back to Syracuse. So that's where the market has fundamentally changed from the kind of mass box opening that Rudy used to do maybe 2012 to 2019 and present day. So the market has changed. And I know people will make arguments that WotC has kind of forgotten how to put value into the uncommon and common slots. I don't know. I think there might be some truth to that. I appreciate better arguments to that. That's the kind of thing where it's an easy argument to make, but it's a difficult argument to back up and prove. So I'm not sure how much credit I give that. Now, there's three problems that will get you if you are the small guy in your living room trying to bust boxes and sell singles. The first is selling costs. And when I say selling costs, I don't just mean market fees and fixed fees, I mean the shipping and handling costs. And this goes back to what TCG Player fixed with the direct program. If you are not in the direct program, your actual selling costs are going to be much higher than card stores who are doing this as a real kind of full-time job and as a big part of their business instead of a side hobby. They're going to be paying much smaller selling costs because of participation in the direct program, because they're consolidating the shipping costs using TCG Player's warehouse in Syracuse. And so when I did my mini mass box opening of Baldur's Gate, and I kept all my records of sales and fees and shipping and handling and everything, something I found upon analyzing it later was that as that small guy, my shipping costs, plus my market fees, plus the fixed fees, the total selling cost together was about 27% of the gross sales price of all the cards in aggregate. And that's because when you sell something like a $3.50 foil lightning bolt or something like that, yes, it's a cheap card and it's $3.50, but that 80 something cents of shipping and handling becomes a significant percentage of that $3.50. And so, yes, you'll sell things like, I sold my ancient copper dragons. I think one of them sold for like $75, and a couple of them were like 55 or 57 or something like that. And after you ship those and pay fees, the total fees and selling costs and everything together as a percentage of the sale costs of the copper dragons were something like 15%. Is much more reasonable, and it was much closer to that market fee, the floor fee essentially of 12.5%. But you will do a lot more of those cheap sales. You will sell a lot more of those cheap cards. And so in aggregate, your total percentage that is selling fees is going to be higher than you expect. And it was certainly higher than I expected going into it. But it was about 27%. And so again, when you're that small guy in your living room busting down boxes and trying to sell the singles, you're going to be paying overall higher fees than, say, card stores that are doing this on a large scale. So that's the first thing that really works against you when you're selling singles. The second is obviously distributor access. And I know right now we're in this weird period where if you got hit in the head really hard and you decided to go open a bunch of Crimson Vow draft boxes, you'd be better off going to the secondary market, going to TCG Player and buying them from other card stores who are selling them at a great loss, I don't know, $74 today for a Crimson Vow draft box, instead of going to distribution if you had distribution access and paying fees and everything else and getting it for $95. But we are in an exceptional time in a really bad bear market with massive overprinting of Magic products. And so that's kind of a small deviation on the timeline right now. Most of the time, again, if you're the small guy doing this in his living room as a side business, you're going to be paying retail costs. And you can do things like get a sales and use tax permit, be registered as a real business, have a TCG Infinite subscription, maybe wait for bonus bucks sales. Maybe you can knock 13% off the cost of those boxes. You'll have a 2 or 3% cashback credit card that you're paying with. So you can do a lot of things to increase the advantage there at what you're buying those boxes for, but ultimately it does not compete with having distributor access. And again, there's always those situations where if you have distributor access because you're a card store, you have a good relationship with your rep, and you kind of get a reputation with him for having good cash flow, for always having money or credit on hand, and you can kind of take things off his hands at favorable prices. Sometimes you'll get even better deals like that, and that can help even more, but that's something that's not available to the hobbyist in his living room doing this as a side job. So that's another thing. That's the second thing that makes it very difficult to make money selling singles, competing against the card stores who are doing this at large scale. And the third thing is variability. And I made a whiteboard video last summer talking about standard error of the mean, which is how you calculate, basically how you calculate your odds of making money on a mass box opening. And I know it makes it sound simple to put it like that, but it requires a little bit of calculation, and a little bit of work to come up with all the data that you need to compute this. And what you're left with is several percentages that say basically your odds of making money are this if you can buy it at this price and you buy this many boxes. And the reason that variability works against you as the small guy is that you are probably not as well capitalized as a card store, and certainly not as a card store that has a revolving line of credit, either with a bank or with a distributor. And so when that distributor says, hey, I can give you this great deal on certain product if you can take $25,000 of it today. And well, if you have an established revolving line of credit with a bank, then yeah, you can take it today. But if you're the guy in his living room, you don't have that. You don't get those opportunities. And when the opportunities present themselves, you're probably not capable of dropping $10, $15, $20,000 to really seize that opportunity and get a big return on it. So that variability works against you because, again, if you are not opening many boxes at once, then the odds stack up that maybe you just kind of get skunked on the boxes that you do open. You don't get enough full art foil ancient copper dragons, and you might end up losing money, or the amount of money you make might be lower. You may decide that it's not worth your effort, but the variability works against you when you're the small guy. And so the card stores who do this as a pillar of their business, they have distributor access, they have better access to capital or credit, and they have a better selling structure and lower overall selling costs if they're part of the direct program. And so what they've done, TCG Player along with the card stores, is basically they've used the technology to create deflation in the price of cards. And so where we see technology being used to reduce the cost of things over time, that's happened with the singles business. And so today is the best time ever to be a player or a collector who wants to go out there and build decks or finish a collection or whatever. You can just go to the TCG Player website, and all at once you can effectively make thousands of card stores across the country compete against each other for your business, and you can get great prices on singles because of it. Now, if you want to sell into that market, it's difficult for you. You need to probably have a brick and mortar card store, or you need to have some type of wholesale relationship with a local card store who will pass on boxes from distribution to you at only a slight markup, not a retail markup. So it's much more difficult, and you're certainly probably not going to have access to things like optical recognition card sorting robots, which are basically an employee who works constantly and doesn't complain and has higher accuracy than a card sorting human. So all of those things will work against you if you're trying to sell singles, and thus selling singles for current income, it's difficult. I know some people do it. I know it's possible, but it is hard. And I think a lot of people do not appreciate the variability of outcomes as a function of the number of boxes you're buying, and just how high the fees will be when you, or the selling costs really, how high the selling costs will be when you're selling a lot of cheap cards on eBay. And so to kind of put it in perspective, I was just browsing around recently, and I was looking at Double Feature. And it's really interesting because if you go on mtgboxsim.com, you pull up Double Feature, you set the filter to all cards $2 and above, and you start generating boxes and looking at the prices, you'll see a lot of boxes come back high 100s, low 200 price range. And I thought, wow, is there actually an opportunity that I could buy some boxes of that, bust them down, and sell singles? And I was looking at the actual cards, and yeah, a lot of those silver screen foil variants, you know, they sell for decent prices, $4, $5, $6 each, and there's a decent number of them in each box. But then I went and I actually did the math. I finally made a spreadsheet that would calculate standard error of the mean, and so I was able to take a sample of about 80 randomly generated boxes off of MTG BoxSim, put it into the spreadsheet I made, enter what my actual cost for buying the boxes would be, how many boxes I thought I could potentially divert money towards buying right now, and had it tell me what are my actual odds of making money. Not how much will I make, not what are my odds of going to the moon, but what are my odds of even breaking even? And, it came out to something like 40%. And that was after you figure in actual fees. What are the kind of fees I've seen selling on eBay after I did the Baldur's Gate small mass box opening that I did last summer? What were the real fees? What were the real number of boxes that I can afford? What's the real price? And ultimately, the odds of making money were very poor. And that's what you're going to get out of this. You're not going to get, yes, you will make money, no, you won't. You're going to get a chance of making money. And that's what those kind of calculations of standard error of the mean will return to you. And so I didn't do it because the chance of losing money on it was way too high. And I think people underappreciate that when they go into selling singles as the small guy. Now, a counter to that is the gentleman from RNG Games. I can never remember his name because he's only said it a couple times on camera that I remember. But when he started his card store, 2 years ago, year and a half ago now, basically he sprinted to scale his singles business as fast as he could so that he could get up to that point where he was opening a large number of boxes regularly. Of course, he was a card store, so he had distributor access, and he got the card sorting robot, it seems, as soon as he could. And he basically scaled the business up ultra fast to where it could become something that generated a lot of money for him. And so he's been very successful because he's kind of gone the opposite way as quickly as possible instead of trying to be a small guy doing it in his living room, informally, part-time, at unfavorable selling costs with no distributor access and highly dependent on the variability of the boxes that you open because you're not opening many. So, he's kind of the opposite end of the spectrum on that. So that's it, guys. Current income, it's kind of hard if you're just a hobbyist TCG investor. If you want the current income, go open a brick and mortar store, and there are plenty of videos online telling you why you shouldn't do that. So let me know what you think. Questions, comments, like, comment, share, and subscribe. Join me on Final Trade. Thanks a lot.